Hey everyone and welcome! Today, we're going to be cooking up the ultimate recipe for the Passé Composé. Seriously, this is the essential French tense you need for talking about, well, pretty much anything that's already happened. And trust me, by the end of this, you're going to have this formula down pat.
So, have you ever wanted to talk about your weekend in French? You know, say simple things like, I watched a movie, or something more exciting like, I visited Paris. Well, to tell any of those stories, you absolutely need the Passé Composé. So, let's get cooking.
Okay, so what is this thing exactly? Well, you can think of the Passé Composé as the real workhorse of the French past tenses. It's what you use to talk about specific, completed actions. It's for events that have a clear beginning and a clear end. Basically, if something happened and it's over and done with, chances are you're going to need the Passé Composé.
Now, I know you might be thinking, a French past tense, that sounds complicated, right? But I promise you, it's really not. The best way to think about it is like a super simple recipe, one with just two main ingredients. So let's forget all those scary grammar rules for a second and just focus on this simple formula.
And here it is, the whole recipe. Step 1. You pick what's called an auxiliary verb, or a helper verb. It's always going to be either avoir or être. Then, step 2, you just add the past participle of your main verb. For example, you take j'ai, that's your helper from step 1, and you add manger, that's your past participle from step 2. Put them together and you get j'ai mangé, I ate. See? It really is as simple as that.
Okay, so let's zoom in on that first step, because it's absolutely the most important one. Choosing between avoir and être. That's the biggest decision you're going to make with this recipe. But don't you worry, because there is a super simple rule of thumb that makes this whole thing way, way easier.
And here it is. This is probably the biggest shortcut you are ever going to learn for the Passé Composé. Just look at this. Around 90%, yeah, 90% of all French verbs use avoir as their helper verb. What does that mean for you? It means avoir is your go-to, your default choice. It's the safe bet.
So let's just break that down. The single most important thing to remember is this. Avoir is the rule and être is the exception. You're going to use avoir for pretty much everything. Être, on the other hand, is only for a small, special group of verbs. We're mostly talking about verbs of movement plus all reflexive verbs. So your strategy is super simple. When in doubt, just start with avoir.
And here they are, the famous exceptions. This is that special little group of verbs that use être. Now, to help remember them, a ton of people use this crazy-sounding mnemonic, DRMRS van der Tramp. You don't have to memorize them all right this second, but you'll see a lot of common ones on this list. Verbs like allé, to go, arriver, to arrive, and partir, to leave. These are the ones you'll need to know.
Okay, one more little detail that goes with our special être verbs. When you use être, the past participle has to agree with the subject. What does that mean? Well, look here. For a feminine subject like elle, you add an extra e to the end. For a plural subject like il, you add an s. And if it's feminine and plural, you add both. Now, this is super important. This only happens with être. You don't have to worry about this with avoir.
All right, so auxiliary verb, check. We've got that handled. Now let's move on to our second ingredient, the past participle. This is just the part of the verb that in English turns, speak into spoken or watch into watched.
And the good news is, for most regular verbs, this is so easy. There's a really simple, predictable pattern. If a verb ends in er, you swap that for an aa ending. If it ends in ir, you swap it for an I. And for re verbs, you swap it for a u. So, parler becomes parler, finir becomes fini, and vendre becomes vendu. See? Super straightforward. Of course, we have to talk about the irregular verbs. But again, don't panic. The good news is that the ones you use all the time are a pretty small group, and you'll get the hang of them really fast just through practice. So for example, avoir becomes eu, faire becomes fait, and voir turns into vu. You'll be using these constantly, so they're definitely worth tucking away in your memory.
Okay, we've picked our helper verb, we've prepped our past participle. Now it is time for the fun part. Let's plate the dish. We're going to combine our two ingredients and serve up some real, authentic French sentences.
And here we go. Let's look at these in action. Hier, j'ai regardé un film. I used avoir because, hey, regarder is not on that special Van der Tramp list. Simple. But then, elle est arrivée à 8 heures. Arriver is on the list, so we have to use être. And check out those little time markers like hier for yesterday or la semaine dernière for last week. Words like that are a massive clue that you should probably be using the passé composé.
So you've seen the whole recipe from start to finish. Now it's your turn to get in the kitchen. Let's do a super quick practice round to see if you've got it down. You ready? Let's do this! Okay, first one. How would you say I visited Paris? The verb is visiter. So first step, is visiter an avoir verb or an être verb? Think about that list. Then, what's the past participle? I'll give you a second to put it together.
All right, question number 2. She slept well. The verb you need is dormir. So, which helper verb are you going to use? What's the past participle? Go ahead and build the sentence.
Now for one that's a little bit trickier, how do you say, we went to the cinema? The verb is allé, which means to go. Think back to that DRMRS Vandertramp list. Is allé on there? What does that mean for your choice?
And here's the final challenge. This one puts it all together. How do you say they arrived late? And we're talking about a group of women, so it's feminine. The verb is arriver. This one tests 2 things: picking the right helper verb and remembering that tricky agreement rule.
Okay, moment of truth. Let's check those answers. For I visited Paris, it's j'ai visité Paris. Visiter is a regular old avoir verb. For she slept well, it's elle a bien dormi. Dormir also takes avoir. For we went to the cinema, the answer is nous sommes allés au cinéma. Aller is on our special list, so it needs être. And finally, they arrived late. Elles sont arrivées en retard. We use être because of arriver, and we add that final es because our subject, elles, is feminine and plural. So how'd you do?
Seriously, great job, everyone. You now have the complete recipe for the most important past tense in French. You know the 2 ingredients, the helper verb and the past participle, and you know how to put them together. You are officially ready to start telling your own stories about the past in French. So, I'm curious, now that you have the tools, which verb do you still find the trickiest to use in the Passé Composé? Let me know down in the comments. And definitely stick around because in our next explainer, we're going to tackle the other big question, when to use the Passé Composé and when to use the imparfait. Thanks so much for watching.